Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about self-care. Now, self-care is a criminally underrated perk that is looked down by a lot of players. The ability to heal yourself is incredibly strong and has been since the game's release, contrary to what many others might try to argue, of course, while they're running Circle of Healing or bringing in their cute little med kits or running pharmacy. I mean, you get the point. The ability to heal yourself in dire situations and without being restricted to specific areas is a significant boon to any team. Sure, many will say that self-care wastes time, but when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, just because healing yourself takes longer doesn't mean you're actually wasting any time. Because, first of all, that time in healing yourself is split between multiple players. But the thing that they're failing to consider is that without self-care, now we're adding time to how long it takes to get you healed by the time it takes for an injured survivor to find another survivor to heal them, the time it takes for an uninjured survivor to find the injured survivor to heal them, the time it takes away from other survivors to heal an injured survivor. That's time they're not able to be productive. So it's really wasting time generally of other survivors. Then there's the fact that while you're being healed by another survivor, instead of it being one player who's vulnerable for a slightly extended period of time, that's two players who are vulnerable to being either injured or downed by a killer. So now you're wasting even more time and putting more of the team at risk, and then when you throw in things like Sloppy Butcher, that has the potential to waste the team's time even more. So once again, grand scheme of things, self-care is much faster, much more efficient than being healed by other teammates. If you have the opportunity to be healed by another teammate, yes, it's faster in that given moment, but it all depends on what the circumstances are. I mean, it's a very situational thing, and in Dead by Daylight, that's something that does need to be considered. But on a general note, if you are by yourself, you don't have someone right there who can patch you up, self-care is significantly more efficient than not having it. So that's definitely something that needs to be considered. And especially for players who are running interference or trying to body block, either for a weak looper or a player who's being tunneled. I've done this myself plenty of times. While you're following a chase, you jump in, you take a hit, you run off. The killer's not following you, they're busy tunneling someone else. You patch yourself up, and then you jump back into the fray. That's just you wasting your own time to keep going into the fray, keep getting hit for that other player. And that's wasting the killer's time rather than having to waste an additional player's time. So you only need just yourself and the player who's being chased rather than needing three players. So that's two people still on generators. There's a whole host of possibilities that can happen when you're using self-care and when you're using it intelligently. And the thing that is really lost on a lot of the critics of self-care is that self-care's power comes from the fact that it adds a fifth player to the game during the course of that healing. It doesn't take away any time from other survivors who are on generators or otherwise being productive. And if multiple people are healing themselves from across the map, they don't have to run to try to find each other, which wastes additional time. Because by the time they reach a player to be healed, they could have already been healed. So there's a lot of things that need to be really considered when really we're going to determine if this perk is actually wasting more time than not. And the reality is, once you actually consider all those variables, self-care, especially depending on your situation, self-care is significantly faster than not being healed, than having to wait to be healed by another player. But on that same note, of course, with the benefits and the drawbacks, the real drawback to self-care, especially since the rework in 6.0, is that self-care is entirely dependent on other perks to make it more effective. And as it should be, to be honest. Considering just how strong self-care is, and especially when you consider how well it synergizes with other healing perks, self-care is incredibly powerful, but it does require other perks to build upon it. So there's a trade-off. It's actually very balanced because of that. I mean, realistically, the only people who are complaining about self-care being so weak are the people who don't want to give up those extra perk slots to be able to heal themselves effectively. But the thing you really got to consider is that when you start adding perks to make self-care more effective, you're effectively making yourself a better support player. You're filling a support role, because botany knowledge increases not only the efficiency that you heal yourself, but also how you heal other people, which increases time efficiency overall, especially if they're not running self-care. You're able to patch them up, put them back in the fight a lot faster. And the best part about it is you're able to patch them up, send them on their way, while you heal yourself. So there's a very, very, very big trade-off when using self-care. And that trade-off typically comes in the cost of having to give up other perks to make it more efficient. But if you really lean into that support healer build, it becomes very, very powerful. And it also synergizes with other perks that make healing yourself easier, such as Resurgence, so you get off a hook and 50% of your health state is already healed. Now that's even faster for you to heal yourself. Or even Reactive Healing, which can cut your time by up to 50% if someone's injured nearby you. So there's a lot of benefit that comes from having self-care, and self-care does synergize with so many perks. By taking care of yourself, you're in effect taking care of your team at the same time. The big criticism about self-care, and this one is actually very legitimate, and I will have to concede to this one, is that a lot of players who run self-care don't do it intelligently. They'll just stop and start self-healing pretty much wherever they are, and that leaves them vulnerable to being downed by a killer while they're mid-chase or while a killer's mind-gaming them. They don't make sure that they are safe first, then start to heal. They just start to heal where they are like an idiot. So there is some real criticism there, but that's not the perk's fault, that's player's fault. And at the end of the day, self-care is a very powerful perk, and there's a reason why behavior statistics prior to the release of the changes in 6.0, they found that self-care was a heavily used perk at high level, in spite of how many people dump on it. It's because it is a very, very, very powerful perk. So it's something that really needs to be considered when you are looking at your perks and looking at what you want to run. And it's shocking how it's really not that meta, especially with how many healing perks you can have. And especially with a lot of the super meta perks being nerfed to a more reasonable degree. Self-care is still as powerful as it's ever been, and using botany just makes it even better, because not only is it still retaining its efficiency, it makes you better at getting other players back into the game much faster, much more effectively. So honestly, like, there's something to be said about self-care. There's a full defense to be said about self-care, and for everyone who's dumping on it, maybe you should consider trying it. Maybe you should consider learning how to use it properly before you dump on it, because it's probably, I would argue that it's probably the strongest perk in the game when paired up with other perks that synergize so well with it. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank everyone for listening. I know I kind of did it in a little bit of a ranty fashion. You can probably tell I was off script. My cats have been clamoring all over me for attention. They are adorable, but it doesn't make for good consistent script readings and recording. So we get this all done. One could take. Anyways, that's going to do it for me. And if you liked the video, you liked the discussion, make sure you leave a thumbs up on the video and hit that subscribe button for more content. Don't forget to check me out on Twitch. Follow me on Twitter for more discussion or other videos or when you're seeing streams go live. That's going to do it for me. I'm going to see all of you guys in the next video. Bye.